Guys, I just want to say happy New Year's, but I wanted to also talk about something I've figured out. And I believe I don't read these books of religion and all stuff. If I read the books of religion, I probably understand, but they're expensive. These books, these vampire books that they're using like NSA equipment and like communist transmitting utilities, they're like $900, and they don't make any sense. Because really, they're just initiations for people going through the transition of how to get to their practice. And their practice is basically custom magic. It's just getting utility money for an imperium. It's not even communism, but they use communism because communism is allowing them to do more extreme things within America. And even within communism, even communism is getting robbed. They just don't understand it. Sorry. Sorry. Excuse me. But I was trying to figure out how the Order Nine Angles functions as a religion, and they don't really have a religion. Um, if you really study it, they have Islam factors, and they have um, white supremacy factors. And I'm not trying to say that in any disrespectful way. I'm just trying to tell you what I believe. If you believe in the Order of Nine Angles, and you follow a certain path and you're involved in that stuff, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just going to say from my point of view, they don't practice a religion. Um, what I do understand though is that they have instated laws that they came from originally, and I don't know too much about the Islamic laws um, on principles, but what I do see is a sequence of nines, and it has to do with like temples of Uppsala, like Uppsala. And I'm not saying that Uppsala is where the Order of Nine Angles hangs out. I'm saying temples like Uppsala, they share Catholic land, and they're on the same property. And I don't know. There was in Uppsala in Scandinavia. There is a place where there was a he was a priest, and he was a Catholic priest. And originally, how they dominated that land, because it was on Folkmut, and how they dominated that land in that temple of Uppsala. From what I understand, is if I have the right temple, is he brought two berserkers with him because they had been Catholics had been battling somebody, and they had captured two berserkers, and they had unleashed these berserkers on this island with these people. I think it's where the Temple of Uppsala is, and the story goes is that if they converted to Christianity, they were spared from the berserkers. Um, but their former religion in Uppsala was they had what they would call folkmoot, and folkmoot is where you gather. This is where like the folk nations and folk come from. It comes from folkmoot, and they would gather together and they would discuss political. It was kind of like their senate or their state. You know, it's just like a meeting place to where it was important they established legal laws within. Like it was like a bunch of Vikings running around doing that, and which is pretty crazy. They even got together and didn't kill each other all, and they would like they would practice their rituals. And what I'm starting to see is like within their rituals at Uppsala and stuff, they have certain things of the orders of nine. With these trees, it goes back to sacrifices on the number nine, and like in one battle, there's a famous battle with the berserkers, not with the berserkers, with the barbarians. They had went against the Romans, and the Romans lost a whole legionnaire. So that means that they had to cut off their hands, and then they would nail their hands to the tree in front of them, and then they would cut off their heads and they would hang their bodies, or they would do whatever. But they killed nine, was it 900 people? And then after that, like their ritual sacrifices, they have to kill nine men. They have to kill like nine of every different kind of animal, and it's just bizarre. And it's all on nines, and I think that this custom on these nines came back, and it goes. I would say even um, if you read like if you I don't know if you believe in the Bible, but in the Bible there's a group of people. It's called the Nephilim, and they were half angel, half man, and they came down. God let they're supposed to teach about God's glory or something like this, and they came down on Mount Hermon, and instead they taught men how to make knives and swords and how to make makeup and stuff like that, and how to use these things to seduce men, how to conquer men, and how to kill men. And then they took wives, and God got pissed at them, and they made these Nephilim. But then it says in the book of Enoch, it says that they cut down all the big trees, and and therefore they can no longer communicate. And I think these big trees are maybe not even like huge trees, but these trees were important groves that they would communicate with these Nephilim. Because when you kill a Nephilim, it doesn't like the realm that it goes into wasn't technically hell, and it wasn't technically heaven, because they weren't spirits of man. So they would have these great power in the spirit world. It's because they were still here. And the way that they would communicate with these Nephilim is they would probably do what the temples of Uppsala and ancient paganism did, and they would communicate with them through these groves. And so they would go to the high trees, and they would do these sacrifices, and then they would do one thing specific, and this is something that is hidden, and I'm not sure if I'm accurate, but they would do something specific. They would used to there was there was a cross, right, and that's where Jesus was hung on the cross. But in Deuteronomy it says specifically, do not hang a man on a tree past 12 o'clock at night. So that's like for the Freemasons, you got the 12 o'clock at night. And this 12 o'clock at night is important because it represents something that goes back to this Order Nine Angles practice. And this Order Nine Angles practice goes to where they would hang, and this goes back to the KKK as well. They would hang a man in a tree and they would leave him overnight. But in Uppsala, they would have a different tradition. They would, this is a tree or whatever. And this is like the little dude. So they would leave him overnight. But what happens is the priests, they would sit under here and they would meditate, and they would have their little rituals, and when they would meditate at 12 o'clock at night, they believed that the man would slip out the bottom, and while he was transiting into hell, he would go into this priest would he would go into hell, and he would come back with knowledge that was divine from Odin and stuff. But what the only higher level than this is advanced technology that was already in place and instilled within certain ritual rites. And what they've done now is the Order Nine Angles, they are practicing a version of this, but instead of hanging a man in a tree, they put a man on a tree in Uppsala temples and stuff like that. I'm not saying they're doing this in Uppsala necessarily, because they probably don't. They probably have hidden groves, but say this is a tree, and they have what they call, if this man was to die on Scandinavian folk moot and all this weird pagan ritual, they take this man and they would assign him this place on a tree, and it's called a blot. So this blot now represents what? The death of a man hanging in a tree. But the only thing that's different about this blot is that when you take a man and you hunt him with a satellite, this satellite is hunting this man. Okay, so this satellite is up in the air, and this is hunting the man. Satellite hunting the man. So this now represents the Illuminati, and it represents the as above, so below. So because these men are killing this man, but what this represents is instead, this represents, if this guy's killing this guy on a blot, this is a higher level of just this, because this represents that his name is in a tree, he's hanging in a tree, but this now represents that he's hanging up as above and as below as the priest. So now the priest has gone to a higher level. He's gone to the 9th level of the Order Nine Angles, because the Order Nine Angles is Odin hanging in the 9 different realms. And that's what this represents. And I figured it out. But it has to do, and this is why in the book of Enoch that it says that God removed the trees, because of the communication aspects of talking to these spirits. And these spirits were very advanced. And I don't even really want to say I believe in spirits, because then you go into like psychotically. I don't believe in spirits, but I do know they exist because I believe in Jesus. But I mean, he said that there is spirits, but I don't go crazy with it, because I know there is technology, and technology has the ability to practice this right here: the killing of a man with in a blot system, and then it's making them a ton of money because it's going through transmitting utilities of like Apsu, Temple of Blood, Order of Angles, Temple of the Vampires, Argentinian vampires. But they basically they funnel money into the space system, and this is the only thing that I know correlates to the as above or as below, so above, and the hanging of a man in a tree, and of the telecommunication aspects at a higher level, and that represents Odin hanging in the nine realms because they've elevated themselves all the way to the ninth level. Um, and if that doesn't make any sense to you, then it just doesn't make any sense to you. But if you guys know anything more about this, um, again, leave it in the comments because I'm convinced that I'm correct that this is where you're gonna find the Order of Nine Angles. You're not like you're gonna find all these little subcults, but this is where it's really going down. And the reason why they do this is they also do